An entire world is ready for you to start your career teaching the path to wellness.
Mastering the science of mindfulness.
And the art of coaching.
To help clients achieve mental, emotional, and physical betterment of life.
Through movement,
nutrition,
recovery, and regeneration.
Because impacting one person impacts a family.
Impacting a family impacts a community.
And impacting a community impacts the world.
Become an NASM certified wellness coach.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts here with my friend and co-host, Mr. Ken Miller. Ken, how are you today?
I'm good, Wendy. How are you?
I am just living a dream.
Of course.
It's a beautiful day here in Atlanta.
Not raining? No
not today. So
right.
I'm going to chalk that up to a good day.
Yeah, we'll take that.
And look at you all sunny and bright with your shirt, kind of bringing out the...
I'm representing Alameda. Yeah, got to represent my hometown. Wow.
Every once in a while, it's always a good thing. But today's topics, guys, we're talking about different types of yoga. And this topic came up because I had a client of mine ask me if yoga would be in their best interest to enhance their physical gains that they wanted. And my answer was absolutely, followed by a question, which was, well, which is the best one? And my answer was, I don't know. I really didn't know. And so I looked into it. We researched. There's so many different types of yoga out there. And I felt like, you know what, this would make for a great episode, because if I don't know, I want to know. And now we want to spread the word in case you too are in a, hiding underneath the box of, I don't know what's out there.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great aspect of fitness and movement overall, because it does come in a lot of different forms. And in my experience, and I'll share one yoga experience with you, Wendy. I did go, believe it or not, to a yoga retreat. Had to be 5-6 years ago now. And this was in Arizona, I believe in Tucson. And going out there, I mean, I think I was the oldest and the biggest guy out there, right? I was the oldest and the biggest guy, but they had taken this cool hotel, converted motel, and just a lot of young, beautiful people, and they just had different styles of yoga. So they had imported these different yoga instructors, and it was a great opportunity for me. I was really curious about yoga, and I mean, I had come invited because this was more of a research trip and looking at yoga, but they had so many different forms. A lot of breathing, a lot of talking about a lot of sun, and this was outside, so the vibe was very cool. They built a platform on top of a pool, believe it or not. So here you are. You've got some people doing other things, like I think they had like some kind of suspension aerobics or acrobatics and on one end. So it was that kind of situation. But I mean, I was moving pretty good when I did that event. So that was pretty cool. But I will say that there was this one instructor, and I know we have a topic to get into, but there's this one instructor, and here we are. He says, okay, grab the person closest to you, grab the person next to you, and goes, I want you to sit with your legs crossed, and I want you to go knee to knee. Here we are. I've gotten, and that took everything I had just to get to that legs crossed position. I know there's a name for it, but I don't know what it is.
Crisscross applesauce.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So, so he said, look at your partner, look directly into the eyes of your partner, and I want you to see the universe through their eyes. And here we are, this young lady that I had never talked to, never seen before. Here we are, we're looking into each other's eyes, and say to that other person, that person across from you, tell them, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So
that is a little creepy. I probably would have been like, listen, I don't know you. And, I don't know if I can feel your vibe, but it brings up there's a movie back that was probably 15, 20 years ago where it was about, yoga, and he was in love with someone else, and this yoga instructor like became in the mix or whatever. And he was like, look into my eyeballs. Do you remember that? I can't think of the movie, but anyway.
Actually, by the time we end this recording, it'll come to you, I'm sure.
I don't know about that. But those of you that don't understand the different poses of yoga and the different types of yoga, there are so many out there. And before we start diving deep into the different types, I want to also kind of throw this out there as human movement specialist, and what I see and what I do. Realize too, guys, that some of these poses, if your body isn't ready for them and you try to get above and beyond to get, as low as you can or as wide as you can in your stance, it can also, cause some harm and injury unless you're smart in your positioning. And so just because people can doesn't mean you specifically should at that moment, but it's something to work towards. So really start to listen to your body when you go into these classes, when you start thinking about it, because unfortunately, some of those positions are really hard on the shoulders. They're really hard on the lower back. Like if you go into a yoga cobra, there's a lot of compression on the lower disc. So if you have lower back pain, sometimes that can actually cause inflammation and more issues later on after that, when in all reality, you should feel relaxed and more flexible and more in tune with your body and yourself. So I definitely wanted to throw that out there. And today we're talking about knowing your yoga with myself, Wendy Batts, and Ken Miller, and we are going to start diving deep. And the first one I wanted to talk about was Vinyasa. I think Vinyasa is probably one of the most common types of yoga that I think is out there. A lot of people know what Vinyasa is, and it like the name Vinyasa means to place in a special way. And this, can be considered more of what they're calling flow type yoga. So it's different types of sequencing and movement patterns that you do. And so you want to have a kind of a foundation, I think, before you would go into some Vinyasa and flowy type yoga positions. But if you are really big on working out and you really want to challenge yourself to physically and mentally, Vinyasa is very good. But I want to strongly say, again, you need to know some of the poses because it is a flowy type class. So it's definitely one that I would say wouldn't be considered for beginners, if you will.
Well, I've taken I had to do the air quotes, but I will. I've done the Vinyasa. There's a place, down in Oakland that I've gone to, and it is one of those things where you do want to know the terminology. Right. So, here I am, I'm getting into a pose, you're in a warrior pose, you're looking to the person to the left, like, why are they facing me when, I'm facing them? It's like one of us is wrong and it's probably me. Right. So when they tell you to transition from one pose to the next, and this particular instructor, they did a really good job of streaming like 3 or 4 poses and then creating a flow of that, going through a couple repetitions each side and then getting into the next sequence. But I was one of those guys that, had to look around, make sure that, it's okay. What position should my feet be? Am I reaching this way, that way? But then once you get a better idea of what the names are, and, and the other thing is just like when you do anything new physically, it's like you think your arms are in one place, but they're actually not in the same position everybody else's are. So getting the sequences and building that awareness is one of the aspects of performing new movements and new exercises, and not just particular to yoga, but it's just a motor learning situation, in that you got to put the words and the movements and the patterns together to really start to get a good sequence going. And once you go for a while, I went to where I was okay, but once you get really good at it, then you start to get the good workout in there. If working out is your goal.
It is definitely a great workout. I tried it, but unfortunately I was like you, kind of looking around like, what am I doing? And the instructor had to giggle every time, because I'm like, I don't even remotely think my body can get into this position. Yeah. And here I am thinking I'm flexible, but that brings up terminology that we've talked about before when we talk about relative flexibility. that, there are certain areas that, you may be very flexible in, but to think about the other side of the joint, it's going to be more restricted. And so some of these poses it was eye-opening for me. And one of those being even just placing my hand flat on the ground. And because I do so much manual therapy and stuff, my hands get very tight. My forearm muscles get very tight. And some of those positionings, or positions that you have to get into with your body, rocking forward and back and side to side, I'm like, I physically cannot do this. And so to me, I thought it was very eye-opening and introduced the concept like, hey, maybe you should do a little more yoga. Probably to kind of down regulate my overactivity in my brain, but then also to, physically for my body. But Vinyasa, I think, is great. Again, you want to have a kind of a background, but if you're brand new to yoga, the next one I wanted to bring up was Hatha Yoga. That one's really great if you are an entry level yoga person, because it's slower paced. It's a kind of allowing you to understand the different poses. It is physical postures of yoga, but because it is slower paced and they're really looking at positioning, I think it allows you to kind of start learning the fundamentals of some of these basic movement patterns, and how to start to sequence them together. So when you do go to Vinyasa, you have a better understanding of where your body should be in positioning before you start adding the more flowy type movements, if you will.
Yeah. And with Hatha Yoga, I've had clients go to a facility, a yoga studio that had this as an emphasis. And just like you're mentioning, Wendy, with your hands and your forearms and wrists getting, a little restricted from all the manual therapy that you're doing, because you are getting into certain poses and that requires a certain amount of, hip flexibility, shoulder flexibility, that, like you said, Wendy, this is a good place to start. But just like anything else, if you sit down a lot, if you're assuming a certain posture for a significant amount of your day, then there are going to be restrictions. And just like you have good trainers out there that understand the body and what it should be doing at a certain time based on your capacity for movement, a good instructor for yoga, especially Hatha, you want to also look at who the instructor is and can they accommodate what you're capable of doing. So not only, I think, Wendy, we're talking about different styles of yoga for Know Your Yoga, but we also want to emphasize that, the quality of the yoga session is also going to be a reflection of the quality of the instructor running the class. So, when you're trying these different yoga classes, it's also a good thing to look at the instructors, because if it's a Hatha-based facility and you have 4 instructors or 4 yogis teaching the same format, then you also want to see that, who is it, and do they understand, an appropriate posture and position that you should be in to do it safely. Because there have been times where I've gotten somebody that has gone to yoga and then their back is tweaked, right? Because it was totally about getting them into a pose versus, okay, what is the goal of the session, which is to increase mobility, improve blood flow and things like that. But if they're trying to solely go for a pose at whatever cost, then that can be a little, sketchy when it comes to how your body responds.
We don't like any sketchiness.
We don't like sketchiness.
And today on Random Fit, we're talking about knowing your yoga with myself, Wendy Batts, and Ken Miller. So far, we've talked about Vinyasa, which is more of the flowy type yoga. We just talked about Hatha Yoga, which again is great for beginners. My seniors love that too, just so you know. But another one that I didn't know really what it was called until I kind of researched it was Ianger Yoga, which is something that relies heavily on props and tries to get you to go deeper into different poses. But the one thing I didn't know about that until we started researching it that I found very fascinating is that this type of yoga is really good for people that are coming in with injuries and that really need to have that slow, methodical type positioning and work within their practice. And so I found that to be interesting because we see a lot of people that are coming in with, dysfunction or, I don't want to say pain, but like discomfort in different areas. And so, knowing some of these different types of yoga can kind of help me too, as a trainer, to say this would go in great combination with what you're doing to possibly help open up your hips more or your chest more or whatever it might be. So I don't know if you've had any familiar or even gone to one of those classes, but I really, I learned a lot on that one.
Yeah. And I have done a couple of this style, but I do have some yoga blocks. So if you're talking about tools that help you get into position safely, and because you're in a position for a significant amount of time in some cases, then you might need a prop to hold your hips up, to lean on, or just so you don't have to go as deep into a certain position compared to what they would consider to be the goal position. But something like a yoga block, and yoga blocks come in different sizes as well. But I do have some yoga blocks in my facility to, if I want somebody to get into, let's say, a seated position where they're going to, they're basically sitting on their shins and their hips are sitting on their heels. But if someone doesn't have the flexibility through the hips and the quads, or their shins are a little tight, you might put a block between the hip and the heel so that you don't have to have as much knee flexion. So, yeah. So that's where I've used the tools to help, get clients into certain positions when I've incorporated yoga poses into what I do with my clients.
Well, I have not done that yet. So maybe that's
now's the time to try, Wendy.
Yeah, I know, right? Apparently I inflict more pain with my hands. And then after that, we do a certain type of workout. But I really think that would be something super beneficial. Another really good type of yoga that I learned a lot about. I don't think this is something for me personally, but I know that there's a lot of yogis, and we say that with love because, that's what they term themselves as yogis, talk really highly of Kundalini Yoga. So I don't know, Ken, if you've ever, when you went to your retreat, if that was a big one. This one's more fast paced. It's really based on like spiritual and physical together. So there's equal parts. However, with this one, with its fast pace, you really want to know your positioning. You really want to know the different poses, but it's bringing in that Kundalini energy within, the lower spine. So people that feel like they need energy in there to open up, or they feel like their body is trapped or they're coiled, this type of yoga practice might be for you. But when you're going through it, you're also involving, chanting and mantras and meditation. So it's really kind of all encompassing, but in a faster pace. And again, I have not personally experienced this type of yoga. I don't know the chants. I'm new to that. Not gonna lie. Yeah. But if that's something that you're into, that might be a type of yoga that would interest you.
Yeah, I have not participated in this type, but at the retreat they did have, they have the mic'd up instructor and taking them through, and you can hear definitely the breathing and the, again, that's a very abbreviated version of what noises they were creating out of that session. But yeah, I with its instruction and the guidance, like you're saying, more from the spiritual, universal sense of this style and format. I've seen it, but not my style, I gotta admit. Not for me. I mean, looking into someone's eyes to see the universe and telling them I love them, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's as Kundalini as I got.
And on Random Fit today, we're talking about knowing your yoga with myself, Wendy Batts, Ken Miller. And just as a quick recap, so far we've talked about Vinyasa, which is more of a flowy type yoga. We've gone through Hatha, which is more of the beginner, really understanding and learning different positionings. We've gone through Ianger, which is more of, really trying to go deeper with props, really focusing on your positioning. It's really good for people that, have some injuries that maybe they need to be very careful with different movement patterns. That might be a great one. The last one we just talked about, which was Kundalini. Again, it's part spiritual, part physical. It is a little more faster pace, especially when you're feeling trapped in that lower spine region. And then another one is Ashtanga Yoga. And so that stands for, because I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So again, looking through some of the research, Ashtanga is translated to mean 8-limb path. And so this one it is expected. You really need to know your positioning. You really need to know the sequences, because it is like Vinyasa, more of a flow, but it is more focusing on faster paced movements. It's definitely not for the beginner. So you really want to be more advanced. So if you're looking to, advance your practice in yoga, then, Ashtanga might be the type of yoga to maybe consider if you haven't done so already, because it is very demanding, and the positionings, they are very unique and very intense.
Yeah. And anytime you add breathing in there, sometimes it's slow, like you'll hold a position and you'll, get maybe a respiration or two, like a full breath in and an exhale, maybe 1 or 2 times within a certain pose. But also while you're moving into and out of a certain posture position, you can synchronize breathing there. So this is one where you really do have to focus on not just, okay, where's my arm going? Where's my leg going? How am I holding my hips? And then now synchronizing, that inhale and that exhale while you're getting into and out of position sometimes. So this is one that you really have to pay attention. So.
Well, you need to pay attention at all, but yes.
Oh man, I know.
It should be second nature by this point. But and the next one we're going to talk about, I've had a ton of people come to me. This is their yoga choice. I have experienced this one. I will say, if you have a weekend out and maybe there were some beverages consumed, this one might not be the best one, or if you just want to sweat it out, maybe it is right for you. It was right for me. My roommate went with me. It was not right for her. So just saying, be careful if you're going to go into this, but we're going to talk about Bikram Yoga next. Bikram itself, there's 26 set poses that you're doing, and the room temperature is extremely hot with low humidity. So on average, these rooms can be anywhere from like 105 degrees or so, with the humidity of anywhere around 40%. And so when you're thinking about this too, you want to make sure that, you can withstand that heat while moving and while breathing. And also you want to be very careful, because as your body heats up, sometimes you can overstretch areas that you think you can easily get into, but maybe your body isn't ready for. So you have to be very in tune with what you are able to do. And usually by the end of classes, you can get into something that you couldn't get into in the very beginning. So it's very rewarding. Or I was like, look at me, like couldn't do this like 30 minutes ago. But I know a lot of my professional athletes really like Bikram Yoga, and it works well within the programming that we have them on their active recovery days, or something that they like to do just for themselves to feel like they're getting into more positions that they can't normally do unless they're in a hot, heated room. And there's Bikram Yoga for you.
Yeah, this is if there was any form of yoga that would be great for a Sunday afternoon where you have nothing else to do, because you go through this, you're in a hot room, you're sweating, and you're getting into these stretches, these big extensive movements, because you are in a hotter or warmer room, and just think that you've liberated some range of motion that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. But if there is, like you said, Wendy, if this is an active recovery day, it's not one of those things that you're going to do to warm up for a workout, because it can be pretty relaxing. And then of course with the heat, that can down regulate the nervous system to where it's almost like you don't want to do anything. And this is like, I'm just going to go read a magazine or just veg out and read them, just read a, couple chapters in that novel I've been thinking about getting back to, right? So this is more of a chill. If I was going to recommend more of a Sunday afternoon or, Saturday after going out that Friday night, and you just want to kind of
Cleanse your soul.
Cleanse your soul inside and out. But you will get sweat. I remember when I did, you just a puddle of sweat, and then you're whatever shirt you had on or shorts you had, you're soaking through everything on this one.
And you have to be okay with sweaty feet in your face because you are in a close room.
Yeah.
There is a lot of sweat. I mean, I first time I did it was like, I don't know if I can gut this, but I bought like this package and I'm like, I'm gonna try it. And the first time I was like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. And then the second time I'm like, but I felt so much better. It was totally worth it. So just position yourself depending on what you can handle. I think that's very important. And I also
don't eat garlic. Just don't eat garlic the night before.
Right. And you'll smell if you have
everything.
a couple alcoholic beverages that will come out of your pores. So
Everything.
you know who partied the night before and who was all about drinking their water. So I want to kind of throw in another thing too. Bikram's also known now, instead of Bikram Yoga, it's now really termed more hot yoga, especially in the United States. There's a reason for that because the actual founder of Bikram Yoga fled to Mexico in 2017 because there was a lot of sexual harassment and lawsuits against him here in the United States. And so those people that practice Bikram Yoga wanted to continue the practice. So if you notice that people have, really want to know about Bikram Yoga, but they can't look it up or find something with the actual title Bikram Yoga, just know that Bikram and hot yoga are the same thing. And that was the reason for the change. Yeah.
And just make sure too, if you're in that facility, something that I learned also is learn about the maintenance habits and the hygiene habits of the facility. Right. So that if you have a 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock hot yoga class and there's a 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, where are they cleaning the mats? That's what
I bring my own mat, by the way.
Or just even the whole place overall, because your sweat is not just staying on that mat. It is. If my experience was any indicator of how much sweat can come out of someone's pores, there's sweat all over the place.
Well, another yoga that I found I think would be very helpful too with some of our senior clients or beginners. Again, we talked about Hatha Yoga being for beginners. Another really good yoga for people that are just starting out, especially if they have problems getting up and down off of the floor. They're not really, sometimes people get really lightheaded when they're, having to move like that, but yet they still want to learn different poses. They need to hold these stretches longer. There's something called Yin Yoga. What makes these different, like I said, it is more of a seated positioning, and you hold these stretches anywhere from 45 seconds to 2 minutes. And so the positions aren't as flowy. They're very like you're getting into these and you're kind of growing, as they say, into those positions to get deeper and deeper. And so they're letting gravity kind of do a lot of the work. And I thought this one, again, I didn't know that much about it. I've heard about it, but I think, if I'm going to be working with some seniors or, people that, really don't want to move around a lot, this might be a really good one for them.
Yeah, I have to say that I haven't seen this one advertised in my local area too. So, and I think with a lot of these, like everything else, movement wise, and it comes to certain branches of a certain style or a certain technique, there's going to be, your base format of yoga, and then of course you're going to have more of the blending and the techniques that are reflective of the person who, thought of that certain, aspect or that little twist that made it their own. So this is, again, when it comes to yoga, again, we're here on Random Fit, both Wendy Batts and I myself, Ken Miller, here talking about knowing your yoga. So looking at, different styles and techniques, a lot of it's going to be like a fusion or variation of a previous technique or style. So, just as we've been talking about with, just to list them off what we've discussed so far, we've had Vinyasa Yoga, right? We have Hatha, Ianger Yoga, and just to kind of go over a couple more, Kundalini, the Ashtanga Yoga, the Bikram or the Hot Yoga. And, in talking about now Yin Yoga is again, I would say novice isn't the right word, but somebody who might have more consideration of, like you said, Wendy, getting into and out of, and might benefit from the static holds where their muscles are going to basically relax into the posture and position, and that's what's going to help them gain range of motion. But overall, so far, and we've got a few more to go, it's just about looking things up, seeing how they describe it. I mean, there's how we describe it, based on what we've read, looking up different yoga styles and techniques, but there's also how they execute it at the different facilities. So as you expand your research and want to try these different things, a lot of these places might offer, 1 or 2 free classes or a trial membership. Take advantage of that. That way you get a feel for the different styles, because you might find that Ashtanga and Vinyasa might be closer in execution than they are in description, right? So
right.
Plus you never know what you might like your instructor, and you might have a connection, or what they say might resonate with you. And, that's what it takes for you to move more often and move better. So with Yin Yoga, I say that's a great qualifier if you want to try something at a slower pace.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next one I really need to look into and actually go to. Yeah. And it's restorative yoga. And basically, when you're talking about and looking kind of what restorative is, it's when you've had that long day and you want to unwind and you need to relax your mind and relax your body. Restorative yoga does that. That's what their main focus is they take some of these poses that they have, and they actually can, kind of make some of these poses easier. They do things that are trying to get you more relaxed. They do use props in restorative yoga. I read that they're using things like blankets and bolsters, and how about this, eye pillows. You give me an eye pillow, y'all, I'm out for the count, especially if it's in a relaxing, dark atmosphere. I'm done, which unfortunately, as you guys, if you've listened to some previous Random Fits, my first yoga class, I took a 60-minute nap and literally slept the whole time. So I just, I think restorative yoga is one that I need to check out. But again, if you are just stressed out in life, you're really busy throughout your day, I think restorative yoga, because it is a little less intense and less, I don't want to say specific, because every pose is very specific in positioning, but I think it might be a good way for you to kind of bring yourself down to, really focusing on yourself, which often we neglect to do.
And, the thing I like about this style is that it was a reflection, and she didn't advertise it like this, but when I was still working at the country club, there was a yoga instructor, and she would have, like you mentioned, Wendy, she had the pillows, she had the bolsters, she had the blankets, she had the mat, and she had, the yoga blocks and all of that. So during different aspects of that hour, you're going through your exercise, and then she'd end off with some sayings for us, things to internalize, and of course some breathing techniques where you sit there, you might put one hand on your chest, another hand on your midsection, just feeling yourself breathe. And it wasn't uncommon for, a couple of the members to start snoring, right? They're just so relaxed, they've downregulated so much, right, that they just, they got into that little nap mode. But then you wake up and you feel, and hey, I'm not saying I wasn't one of those that was snoring, but there was there's a time when you open your eyes and you're just like, oh man, I feel so good right now. Right?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So again, she didn't advertise it like that, but this is the exact same. This she might as well have for how it was described as far as our reading and understanding it, and how she executed it. So. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, in all reality, there are so many different types of yoga, yoga types that are out there. And to your point, you really want to research the best ones for you. And I mean, due to the sake of time, I mean, we're still not even talking, we're not going to go into like prenatal yoga. Obviously, super important if you're, a mommy to be, or you really want to work on some of those muscles needed for, labor and practicing. And then also just to kind of help kind of ease your mind on what's getting ready to how your life is getting ready to change. So, I would say look into prenatal yoga. There's one that's called Anusara Yoga. I think, that's also one too, that's very modern day Hatha. That's a really good one. There's another one called Jivanmukhi. I'm hopefully I said that right, but that one's really also focused a lot on the Vinyasa infused type courses and classes. Like we said, a lot of these are so interconnected. But one of the ones I wanted to finish with, Ken, I think would be talking about something that literally came in the mail to my house. It is a thing out in Atlanta. And I've talked to many yoga instructors and they're like, no, this is for real. Some people agree with it. Some people don't. But kind of the latest trend in yoga is goat yoga. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I said goat, goat, animal yoga. So when we're talking about knowing your yoga, I'm like, ooh, tell me more. But this actually started to become a thing in 2016 when a lady by the name of Lainey Morse, she came up with this concept because she was going through some deep depression. She was going through things to try to figure out how to enhance her mood. And that was through her animals that she had on this farm. And then she also wanted to do some of these yoga poses, and her goats actually would jump on her back, and, which obviously is more weight. So it's definitely more challenging, but she found some sort of peace with this and then wanted to share it with the world. And so, goats are known to have a really good bond with people, and I was like, okay, it totally makes sense if you're that person. However, I'm also like, dude, I'm doing yoga with goats, and like, is it clean? Are they going to the bathroom around me? Like I go there. Yeah. So, if it's something that you think could enhance your mood and you want to have yoga with pets, maybe goat yoga is for you.
Yeah. If you feel like doing yoga at a petting zoo, this is no, I'm just kidding. I mean, I again, like you, it's like, I haven't tried it, but, from what I've seen on, some video clips that, those that are doing it are enjoying it. And that's really what matters. So if you're going to combine, you're communing with nature and, the animals, and, you're getting some exercise and movement out of it, hey, more power to you. But I don't know. I just can't. I think petting zoo, when I hear about.
Well, that's a part of how they finish.
Yeah.
So yoga, these courses are anywhere from 35 to 40 minutes long, and usually the last anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes are spent with the animals, of petting them and playing with them. And, of course, I'm like looking up, well, what kind of goat is it? And just if anyone wanted to know that, it's a mixture of Nigerian and pygmy goats that are dwarf size. So that's the type. They're not using full blown big old goats. They're dwarf goats. But, so I found this really to be fun, Ken. Again, we could have probably talked about yoga for another 2 hours, but if you really wanted to kind of expand your knowledge of yoga, I'm really hoping that those of you guys joining us on Random Fit with Wendy Batts and Ken Miller today enjoyed the topics that we covered. Go through each one of those topics, see maybe something that might have sparked your interest, and then dive deeper, see if it really does resonate with you, see if there's courses out there, and give it a try.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I want to try some of these things, or I don't know. All I know is, like, the more I talk about it, the more tighter I feel. Like I got to stretch out now that we've talked about yoga so much. So, or I got to turn up the heater in my house. I don't know. But anyway, hey, so for those of you listening to us, thank you so much for spending this time listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, and on this topic of knowing your yoga. So like, follow, subscribe, download, share, comment, all of that good stuff. So let us know what else you'd like for us to talk about, and we will get right on it. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.